Welcome back. This is the beginning of video tutorial part 2 for the zombie lab. We left off, we had just selected all of the malls that were within 5 or 10 mile drive of an affected Taco Bell. These are sites of secondary infection, and what you want to do next is to create a buffer around each of the selected malls. I'll zoom out to the full extent. These malls that are showing up in blue represent an additional risk to those citizens living within, and we will arbitrarily decide 3 miles, which is a long way for zombies to travel, and that risk will be eventually subtracted from the initial survival percent that we see in this layer from the zombies that came directly from a Taco Bell. This will be zombies that came from a mall that was near a Taco Bell. What are the steps? Buffering is a very common tool to use in GIS, so it's in the geoprocessing window. So click on geoprocessing, select buffer. The input features will be large enclosed malls, and it will only buffer those that are selected by default. You can leave the file name as California LA enclosed malls buffer if you would like, or you may want to add something like a 3 in order to indicate that it's a 3 mile buffer. 3 in the linear unit window, and let's change decimal degrees to miles. Not a scientific unit, but one that we're comfortable with, and the rest of this can be left alone. Click OK, and buffers will appear momentarily. Okay, notice that the buffer maps are now created, and that you can turn off the large enclosed mall layer, and that these buffers represent extra danger. Answer a question or two in Moodle at this point about your buffer map. Okay, next we want to convert the buffers that we have created that are vector layers to raster layers. In order to do that, click on the Arc Toolbox on the tool ribbon here at the top. The Arc Toolbox will appear, and from the list of toolkits, click the plus sign next to the Conversion toolkit, and click the plus sign next to the Raster tool set. Among the Raster tool sets, click Polygon to Raster, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to change these vector polygons to a raster format. Double click to launch the tool. The input feature is the one that you just created, the buffer. So this is California LA enclosed malls buffer 3. Change the value field from object ID to total stores. We're going to do this because we believe that malls with more stores represent a greater danger to the health and safety of those living near a very large mall as opposed to a very small mall. Large malls equals more zombies. We'll rename our output raster dataset, or our output raster layer, enclose malls buffer, and then just let's add the word raster to the end in order to help us remember what file it is. And we're going to click OK, and when we come back, let's save our work. Okay, see the tools working here. Sometimes at the bottom it gives us a warning. Turn the Arc Toolbox window off. going to uncheck the enclosed mall buffer and make a note of the map that we have created. Just to be safe, let's click File and Save As, and save it to your desktop. Keep in mind that this is not the desktop of the machine in front of you, but the desktop of your virtual machine. I'm going to call this Zombies. Well, I just called it Zombies _ That's not really what I wanted to do, but just give it a new name and save it to your desktop. Okay, the next step is that we will examine our rasterized version of our buffer map. And what we see is that in this lime green has 133 stores. That appears to be this mall here. What we want to do is to reclassify or change the number of stores to a risk factor. In order to do that, we need to open the toolbox once again, and this time we're going to select from a different toolkit, the one that is Spatial Analyst Tools. We will click the plus sign next to the Reclass tool set and select by double clicking Reclassify. So that was Reclassify. The input raster, of course, is our buffer raster, and when we select that, we want to go ahead and leave the reclass field at value. But what we're going to do is essentially round these old values to the nearest 10% of that value. So 11.5 would then be 12. 133 would be 13%, and these represent the additional risk to neighborhoods near within 3 miles of a mall. 140 is 14, 142 also 14%, 143 also 14%, 148 is 15%, 160 is 16%, 170 is 17%, 185, we'll have to round that up to 19% risk, 223, 22%, 250 is, or 25%, and 285, we will call that 29, nearly a 30% greater risk, which will all be subtracted from the survival percent. We're going to change node data to 0 because it will be a 0% chance of additional zombies, because these are areas a long way from any additional mall, so no risk. We want to rename this field to something that we can remember, like mall _ buffer _ reclass. In ArcMap, make certain that you never use a space in a file name, nor begin any file name with a numeral. Everything should be ready. Check the lab manual in case you couldn't follow what was going on here. There's a small table to help you out, and click OK. The reclass tool runs here at the bottom sometimes. And a new map with very bad colors appears. I will turn off the old raster and try to minimize it. I will change this to, by double clicking on the color swatch, and change it to something happier, like a light green for good survival rate, and then that should be enough to help us get to the next step. At this point, I'm going to pause this video, and it will be the conclusion of part 2.